A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. I'm Ritwika Gupta. On the show tonight, we'll be bringing you a special report on understanding air pollution and the initiatives by Devic Earth. And in the second segment, a conversation on the tech landscape lined up with Ashok Hariharan, co-founder and CEO IDfy. Now, air pollution has become a pressing issue that affects industries across the spectrum and impacts lives in India and around the globe. But the level of awareness about pollution and its consequences might not be as widespread as one might expect. That's why here at Leaders of Tomorrow, we are kicking off today's show with a fun game, Fact or Fiction. In this segment, I'll present statements about air pollution and together we'll uncover whether they are true or simply false. All right, let's have a look at the first statement. Only industrial areas have air pollution issues, so rural and suburban areas are safe. Is that true or false? False. Urban and rural areas can also have high pollution levels due to sources like vehicle emissions, agricultural practices, and natural pollutants, making it a widespread concern. Yes, we must remember that pollution knows no boundaries, making it essential to address air quality issues everywhere. Next statement. Indoor air can sometimes be even more polluted than outdoor air. Truth. Indoor air quality is often overlooked but can be significantly worse due to inadequate ventilation and pollutants from household products, furnishings, and other indoor sources. I think this also highlights why it is vital to evaluate both indoor and outdoor environments for better health outcomes. Moving on. Using air purifiers alone is enough to solve the problem of air pollution. Absolutely false. While helpful in improving air quality in localized spaces, air purifiers cannot address larger issues. This is why comprehensive solutions like Pure Skies by Devic Earth and systematic changes are necessary to tackle air pollution effectively. Next, switching to renewable energy sources like wind and solar can significantly reduce air pollution worldwide. Fact or fiction? This is indeed a fact. Renewable energy sources produce minimal air pollutants compared to fossil fuels, making them a critical component in reducing air pollution. Yes, we need to bridge energy needs with environmental care. And now here's the final statement. Air pollution only becomes an issue during specific times of the year, such as winter or harvest seasons. This is a tricky one. What do you think? Absolutely false. Although pollution levels may spike seasonally like a winter smog or agricultural burning, air pollution is a persistent year-round problem influenced by traffic, weather patterns, and industrial activities. Well, we hope you found those insights enlightening, and on that note, let's deep dive into why clean air matters for businesses globally.
Air pollution is undeniably an invisible threat impacting multiple facets of our day-to-day lives. In addition to the numerous health and environmental challenges it creates, it also significantly affects the business sector and the economy as a whole. Clean air is a necessity for businesses and has proven to be an essential tool to foster productivity and employee health. Evidently so, as poor air quality costs the global economy $225 billion each year in lost labor income. A very recent example of this can be the rising poor air quality of Delhi that has made it difficult for startups to handle their business, caused a 20% loss for traders, and has reduced the overall productivity of the capital. Secondly, adhering to air quality regulations helps businesses safeguard themselves against potential penalties and fines. Additionally, increase in awareness about climate change has fostered a trend that shows that consumers are getting inclined towards brands that champion the cause of sustainability. For example, Unilever reports that a third of consumers are already choosing to buy from brands doing social or environmental good. Furthermore, research also showcases the fact that consumer spending is often less in more polluted areas. The researchers from data-driven Yale state that this is because people tend to stay indoors on days with higher levels of air pollution rather than go out to spend money in shops, restaurants, and entertainment facilities. It is also equally important to understand what businesses and MSMEs can do to combat this. Firstly, they can adopt cleaner mechanisms by investing in energy-efficient, low-emission technologies. For instance, businesses can invest in solutions like Pure Skies, which offers a holistic approach to combating air pollution through innovative radio wave technology. Secondly, ESG compliances and sustainable practices should remain higher in the agenda for a business to function. Lastly, businesses and MSMEs can play a pivotal role by actively monitoring and managing their emissions, reducing waste, and embracing greener supply chains. By prioritizing sustainability, not only do they contribute to combating air pollution, but they also enhance their reputation, attract eco-conscious consumers, and ensure long-term profitability in an increasingly environmentally aware market.
Now, quickly moving on to highlight a few success stories of businesses that have benefited from Pure Skies by Devic Earth.
Devic Earth has come out with a Pure Skies system, and we did a test of it for 16 days where we could read live the real data from the machine itself. We could find that the air quality improved by 50% or more. So I would definitely recommend this to anyone, especially in our industrial world, as it will help the entire neighborhood also.
Hi, I'm Naren Kumar from VR Foundries. We are a company making castings for various industries in India. As you are aware, foundries are in general slightly polluting, and we wanted to have a better ambient air quality within our factory, and that's the reason why we chose this product. It's done its job fantastically. We could clearly see that the air quality within the premises and within the factory has greatly improved.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. In this segment, we put a spotlight on IDfy to really answer what it takes to build a tech-driven business in a competitive landscape. In conversation with Ashok Hariharan, co-founder and CEO IDfy. Listen in. Ashok, thank you so much for joining us today on ET Now Leaders of Tomorrow. It's a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure here.
So, Ashok, I want to start this interview by talking about IDfy's journey since 2011. Just take us through, the journey, how the brand has evolved, over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. So when we started IDfy, now it's about 14 years, 2011 is when we started. We looked at one of the ideas was that fraud is, ubiquitous in India to a large extent, and we looked at it saying, okay, if you have to solve for fraud, what do we need to do? And we were looking at this as virtual transactions increase, how do you deal with fraud, right? That's sort of the idea that came about. But we were way too early in the market, right? Like we were at least, I would say, 8 years ahead of the market. Sure. Our counterparts in the US started like 2 years after us. So we were kind of, maybe at some level, it was this grand idea that there's 1.5 billion people, and virtual transactions will increase, and then there's a lot of people where trust is a deficit in India. How do we bridge that deficit is how it started.
Yeah.
you have to remember at that time, if you look at RBI's regulation, etc., KYC was still being done
Yes,
physically.
yes.
So none of what we see today existed then, and those rules didn't exist. So a lot of that first 5-6 years were a bit of a struggle, if you may. We were waiting for the market to pick up really, and when we raised a little bit of capital, not too much, I think about $100,000. That's it. Today $100,000 is nothing, but in those days we made that last for quite a bit, close to about 2-3 years, because we started on the enterprise side. We started doing background verification first because that's where we thought, there was a ready market. We entered there first, and over a period of time, as e-commerce, sort of became ubiquitous, as social commerce became ubiquitous, the need for verification and authentication became more and more important.
Absolutely. Now, before we get to understanding IDfy's solutions and offerings, I want to know from your vantage point, where do you think India stands in the global tech landscape today, in terms of how are we really leading the charge as far as innovation and technology is concerned? And of course, how is IDfy contributing to the narrative?
If I look at financial services specifically, which is where we play about 50-60% of our revenue is financial services.
Yeah.
I think India is far ahead of the rest of the world, right? You think about UPI. There's no such thing like your UPI in anywhere else in the world. If you look at even the innovations in the financial service sector, look at our regulator. I think we really are thinking we are probably 10-15 years ahead of the rest of the world in general. Apart from that, I think another thing that India is amazing at, and I was talking to someone about this, is that we have figured out how to deliver services at a cost so low that most of our competition globally cannot compete with us. So we have this unique ability to deliver services at pretty much pennies to the dollar, if you were to compare to the US, and that kind of opens up the opportunity for Indian companies to deliver services of the same quality globally, but at a price point which is not like a US counterpart might not be able to do.
Right.
And I think that's something that we have built as capability over the last 5-6 years, and same with IDfy, right? If I look at our own scale, we do close to about 80-odd million transactions a month. Sure. Our largest counterpart in the US probably does 10 million, and we do 80 million, right? There's just like the scale is so much different, and we do this at literally, países, really, where US the same thing cannot even be done at $1.
Right.
So that kind of what India has done, I think, is really figured out how to deliver world-class service at price points which nobody else can compete with us on.
Right. Now, coming to IDfy, I understand innovation is at the core of IDfy's DNA, right? From virtual KYCs, to preview as well, right? Could you just run us through some of these initiatives that you have taken? So
if you think about fraud in general, right? Fraud evolves. It starts, and the kind of fraud that we see today didn't exist 5 years ago. UPI didn't exist 5 years ago. So if you think about all the scams that are going on, that wouldn't have been possible without UPI, really. Yeah. Because a bank account needs to be opened and money needs to be transferred into a bank account. Yeah. And therefore, the kind of fraud, as fraud evolves, we also kind of needed to evolve and build solutions to catch the new ways that fraudsters use to get into the system. So that's where our sort of innovation comes into play, really. If we don't innovate, we don't keep up with the fraudsters, really, right? Because they are maybe ahead of us in some sense, and we are really playing catch up because they always figure out new ways of getting to the system. So if I were to look through our 14-year journey, we were the first ones to introduce digital background verification, if you may, where employee onboarding became digitized, and that was us introducing that in the market. In 2015-16, we ended up releasing our APIs, which were detecting tampering in documents and face match liveness. These are innovations that we came up with very early, if you may. Our AI models, we were building AI based models around 2016 onwards.
Okay.
Right? We had our own LLM models by about 2018 when Google just came out with that transformer model, right? So we read that paper and actually built our own LLMs. So we had to do that largely because that's the only way to keep up with the with the fraudsters, not even the market really.
Sure.
Then in 2019, when video KYC regulations came out, we were the first ones to launch video KYC. And today, if I'm very proud of our latest product, which is Privy, which is the India's first DPDP privacy governance stack. And we have a it's about a set of about 4 products which solve privacy for, it's basically privacy tech. It solves privacy governance as a problem for enterprises, and how do they get into making sure that their companies are compliant to the law.
Absolutely, and I just want to pick up on that. Speaking about Privy, right? How do you think that's really going to impact, when it comes to data, when it comes to data privacy for businesses?
Yeah, if you look at privacy, it came from a personal story. I'll tell that story as well. If you think about how many calls do you get in a day from spam calls?
Oh God, now I can't keep a count. It's crazy.
How did they get your data? Right? They got it because somebody sold that data to someone, right?
Right.
And I get about 50, 60 calls, like every builder in the country probably calls me because I posted some house on rent on one of those e-commerce sites. And after that, I've been tortured, if you may, right? And that's where the story originates, is that about 5 years ago, I started to think about, okay, that there needs to be a better way to deal with personal data, and we need to deal with that with respect. Sure. I think our data is not respected enough by enterprises, and that's where I started getting more involved in that privacy space, and we built our products over the last 4 years.
Okay.
The idea behind Privy is essentially that it allows enterprise to get compliant, number one, but more than that, it establishes trust for that enterprise.
Right. Ashok, I also read that IndiaMart has picked up a 10% stake. Tell me, what does this partnership signify for you? And also, how is this going to impact your strategic direction from here on?
So, on the get-go, one of the IndiaMart is it's a financial investor. They are a strategic investor, but they've invested in us from on a financial basis, not necessarily. We are not an IndiaMart company, if you may.
Yeah.
But having said that, what we are really looking forward to is, if you think about what IndiaMart has, it's about 10 million odd enterprises that have signed up on IndiaMart. There's potentially a way to establish trust for those enterprises. These are small merchants in remote towns. How do you know that their goods are going to be delivered properly to you? Is there a way to maybe pre-authenticate them and establish that level of trust in those enterprises, right? So that's sort of what we are hoping to sort of build as a joint product with IndiaMart.
And you also aim to surpass about 200 crores in FY25.
That's right.
What's the strategy?
Well, 200 crores is kind of going to happen anyway. So essentially what we are looking at it is 3 big platforms. Mm-hmm. We're looking at one as an onboarding stack. How do you onboard people in a better way and onboard them easier with as little fraud as possible? Second is our risk and fraud stack, which is essentially around detecting fraud when you're onboarding an individual or an enterprise. How do you know that this company is legit? Should you be giving X amount of loan to them, etc.?
Sure.
So that's our second stack, which is fraud and risk. And the third stack is going to be privacy.
Okay.
So along these 3 lines is what we operate as a company. We now do this across India, Philippines, Indonesia, MENA, and what we look at over the next few years is around expanding that out to other developing markets,
sure.
Largely Southeast Asia, Africa, MENA regions. That's sort of what we are looking at.
Right. Ashok, what advice would you have for entrepreneurs in this very competitive tech landscape, in India and, even globally for that matter?
Yeah, I have 2 stories. One is something which at least for IDfy, I think we've been kind of fortunate to be where we are today. Mm-hmm. But it was a hard battle, right? It's a 14-year battle. We grew really only in the last 5 years. So sometimes I do tell people that, really if you think about it, you need to have the grit and perseverance to last long enough that when luck happens, mm-hmm. you kind of are beneficiary of that, right? So you expand your horizons as much as possible so that you, at some point, something
sure.
good happens, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people give up way too early because they run out of funding or whatever else, they have other opportunities. I think sometimes grit just takes you there, right?
Right.
The second thing I think, which is again, the advice, I don't know if I should say advice, because honestly, success, it's just a sample of one, right? Everybody has a completely different story of how they hit their stride. But for IDfy, one of the things that I would say that we have done historically, and I think we have done it relatively well, this is what I'm the most proud of, is how we have built an outstanding team. And we don't have an attrition issue in IDfy, largely because of the culture that we have built. It's about respect. I think there are way too many companies here, and there's news all over the place on this topic, is that if you don't treat your people well, eventually it's not going to go well for you, right?
Absolutely. Finally, Ashok, tell us, what is your long-term vision for IDfy, and also short-term vision over the next 5-10 years or so?
I think one of the things about 3 years ago that we set ourselves a goal, we achieved that, is about break-even. We are EBITDA positive, which is we are also cash flow positive. We don't do any of those adjusted EBITDAs.
Sure.
So we are cash flow positive as well. So that allows us some level of breathing space to kind of grow from here. So that we achieved about last year. Going forward, our goal is continue growing at that 50 to 60% year-on-year kind of mark for the next 5-6 years. If we can achieve that, that's by either introducing new products or going into new geographies. Then that kind of sets the stage for possibly an IPO in the near future. What I would like to see is IDfy kind of, our vision is that this should last way longer than my lifespan, right? So can we build an org which lasts for 40 years, and that cannot be built with thinking about the short term as much as thinking about how do you build culture, how do you build a great HR practice, how do you build a great operational practice, how do you treat your customers, more importantly. Eventually, I think that those are the only things that matter.
Fantastic. Well, all the very best to you,
Thank you.
Ashok. It was lovely chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
With that, it's a wrap on this episode of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 12. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.